there about?
Yeah, so one of the new things that we included in the new Flurry Outlook is real-time metrics. So these actually update every 15 seconds. And you can look at activity for up to 3 apps at once, and you'll see like the little line moves a tiny bit after the 15 seconds is over. So we can see this information for 2 or 3, up to 5 apps all at once. We can also create different app groups. So the ones that we have set up default for you are Android, iOS, and tvOS apps. But if you had more complicated groups that you wanted to create, where if, for example, you wanted to see the Android and iOS version of one app, then you could do that, and then they would automatically load here. Some of the other things are that you can actually add filters to these as well. So in real time specifically, we only have countries and app versions, but if we go ahead and take a look at the new usage tab, this is where we've actually put a lot of the things that in the old interface were all in, you would have to go in and look app by app and understand all of these metrics. We put them all in one place, and these are the ones that we feel like people commonly use, and you can toggle over and then basically see the information for any of the metrics you would want to see. And then of course, if you expand it out this way, then you can take a look at the physical numbers, and as always, you can still continue to export the data as a CSV, and you can also change the time period that you're looking at. So by default, we usually look at the last 28 or so days, and then you can adjust it as you need. Another feature here is you can add a new filter. So when you're looking in the usage dashboard, you can filter it by a number of things, whether it's region, gender, or age, as well as language and app versions. And so we know app versions is one that really interests people when they've launched a new version and they kind of want to get an idea of version adoption and how people are maybe embracing or not embracing a new version and sticking by old things or moving forward. Retention is always an important one. This is a question we get asked a lot. As I mentioned, we do have on the Flurry mobile blog some interesting information about retention by different app categories, and then what the 30-day retention looks like for median app in each of those categories. We offer you the ability to look at retention 2 separate ways. One is based on the percent returning, and one is rolling retention. And for those who are not familiar with what those mean, percent returning is if I have a user who installed an app and I want to understand, are they coming back on day 7, for example? Then if I use the percent returning, then I'll be able to see what percent of those users came back exactly on day 7, once they installed the app.
Nice.
So that's really more important for when you're looking at new users. And then rolling retention is going to give us an idea of how often users in general are coming back. So if it's, say, August 1st and then a user comes back on August 2nd, they would be counted in the day 1 retention. If I did it on August 5th, and that's, let's say, day 5, and I didn't come back until day 5, if I'm looking at the day 5 rolling retention, I would automatically be included in days 1 through 5 at that point if I showed back up on day 5. And as you can imagine, normally rolling retention looks like this, just because it's a natural way for that to look. With percent returning, the first type of retention, it can look a little different depending on the day of the week, and that might tell you something interesting, right? That users who maybe install the app on the weekend are more likely to come back versus users who install it on the weekday might be more likely to come back, and that's going to depend a lot on the kind of app you have and the user journey of someone who would use your particular app.
Let's say I pay for I pay for ads, and I have a tracking link, and through external systems I can usually do that, but how does Flurry handle that?
Yeah, so Flurry actually has a user acquisition analytics portion to it. So if you are using something like a Coachava or an AppsFlyer or one of those things, we do allow you the ability to basically tack on a link tracker onto whatever you have there, and then you actually can come into Flurry and you can see are those quality users? Because you can segment those users as like a specific channel, and then understand if those users are coming back and how they're engaging with the app.
Okay. Well, we do happen to have a Kachava plugin and a Flurry plugin, so it would be nice to tie those two things together to use. So, okay, excellent.
So in addition to changing the overall look and feel of Flurry here, one of the major updates we've done is we have now included the Explorer tool. And so the Explorer tool basically allows you to do the equivalent of running really complex SQL queries and getting the answer within a matter of seconds. So for us, what that means is you have segments, funnels, and cohort analysis at your fingertips. And when you come into the tool, we normally recommend building off of one of the default queries. So you can look at DAU overall, and then the job will run and give you the answer in a matter of seconds. And then some of the other ones that we have are DAU by gender, and this will give you an estimation as well. And just like in some other parts of the tool, you can also toggle on and off. So say I don't want to see the unknowns because it's not helpful to me in this particular scenario, then I could just do that, and those are the only things I'm going to see. And then you can expand out and take a look at the numbers more closely here. When you instrument custom events for some of these apps, this is where the Explorer tool really shines. So now we can really get to answering hard questions, or maybe questions that we thought were hard and are actually easier to answer, because that has also happened before. So I'll just give you an example of some of the things that we'll do. So for example, one of the things that I can do is take a look at the demographics of users specifically who installed the app in the last 30 days. And I could get really granular with that. So you can see here I have a filter as install date and time as the last 30 days, but I could pick a very specific day here. I could also pick the last 7 days as a default, or I can pick any time range I'm really interested in getting that information about. Another kind of cool one that people seem to like is you can include users that had a session in a particular number of days. You can also include users who had very specific usage, right? So you can say, I want to see users who came at least one time in the last 7 days. You could look at users who came exactly one time in the last 7 days, or you could look at users who came, let's say, less than 2 times. And so this way I can kind of segment and understand things about my users. So when we run this query again, it's going to show us the estimated age and gender for users who had at least, or who had less than 2 sessions in the last 7 days. So when you have an understanding of how you want to segment your users, you can really kind of get granular and understand more about them through the segmentation tool.
And it looks very easy to use. I like the fact that you don't have to write a complicated query or understand, or even understand.
You don't even need to understand
query languages just to do it. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's an important thing to mention too, because app developers aren't the only ones who are using our tools, right? It's people who are analysts, people who are marketing people, and people who frankly have different levels of technical knowledge. And so I think knowing that's why we've tried to build this in a way where anyone can really use it and get to those answers. So
that's a very good point, because I know a lot of our developers, they start out as an indie developer, but then maybe they team up with somebody, and then they grow to 3 to 5 people, and then maybe they blossom out to 60 people, and create a studio out of it. But not everybody there is a programmer. So.
Right. Yeah, and I've met with a lot of people who run like app development shops too, where they build the app for clients and they manage most of the stuff, but the client wants to understand, how do I get an answer to this, right? So, you can save these custom queries that you make, and you can choose to share them with everyone who has access to that account, or you can just keep it private to yourself. But in the cases where you share it out with people in the company or in the app who have access to it, then an example is right. If you're that app development shop, then you can say to your client like, oh, here's like the really quick and easy way for you to get the answer in 1 second. So
then is it possible then to have sort of authorizations inside of Flurry, then you can say like this user can see these reports but not all these other reports?
Yeah, so the way that it currently works is that you have an admin and then you have other just regular users. And so if in a company account you have 50 apps, you can decide that a particular user can only see 2 of those apps.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so the way that it currently works is that if I have access to those 2 apps, if it's a query that's a public query within that app, then I will be able to see it if I'm a regular user. Or it's just private and I, the person who made the query, is the only person who will be able to see it.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Yeah. So let's move on to funnels. So funnels is something that is, we say 2 of the biggest use cases for this are basically understanding registration flows and maybe actions that users are taking once they install the app, or something like an in-app purchase, right? So you can understand like what are actions that users are taking before they get to the in-app purchase, and if there are certain steps that you feel like they should be taking before getting there, you'll get an understanding of if they're doing those things or not. So I'm going to give an example here with our Chatterific Android app. I have a saved query here, which I called user registration flow. And as you can see, I could make this a private or public funnel. So I could toggle this on and off here and get the answer. So if I want to understand if users who have registered for the Chatterific app, and for this purpose, it's basically a messaging app. Maybe I want to understand if a user is going to start sending chat messages, because I know that if a user sends a chat message, then it means that they're likely to be engaged and come back to use the app. So the funnel steps that I had here are based on custom events that I have in the app. So first is user registration completed, then allowing contact access, and then third is sending a chat. So we can see when we look at this that of the users who registered in this time period, about 17% of them actually allowed contact access, and then of those, all of them who allowed contact access actually sent a chat. So, something that we would learn in this scenario would be that if users allow the contact access, they're going to be highly likely to. And one thing to note here is this is demo data, so we know that it usually doesn't work out perfectly with 100%, but maybe it will work out 100% for some of our users.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, exactly. And I could do a couple of different things here, like adding constraints. One of my favorites is the time since last step. So I can use this to say, all right, someone completed the registration, but I want to know if they allowed contact access within whatever time period I really want to go with. So I can say within a matter of seconds, I could look at days, hours, and minutes. And then you can also restrict it, right? And I can say that there has to be exactly this much time that's lapsed between these steps, and do I want it between 1 and 2 minutes, or 1 and 5 minutes, or 1 and 2 days. So you can get really granular with that kind of information, and then just run the query again. And again, if there was something that I really liked, I could just go here and save it. And then I could export the data as CSV as well over here. So that's a quick look at funnels. And you can also continue to filter this. So you could do this by looking specifically at users who installed within the last 7 days. You could look at users who had sessions within the last few days. And then you could also filter by demographic information. So really the kinds of things that you can filter on are almost limitless. So we definitely encourage people to come and take a look at it. And then you can even look at app version. So the point is, if you had a really specific question and someone came and asked you, we want you to be able to answer the question through any of these 3 tools.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And so the last tool in here is the cohort analysis tool. And so basically what this tool allows you to do is understand the difference between if a user completes one specific action and then comes back and completes a second specific action. So you can kind of set that time period. So over here we have, number of days. So you could pick like, day 1 through, I believe it's like day 30. There we go. So I could see if a user came and installed an app and then did a second specific action. And again, I can go and dimension this by a number of things like gender or location, those kinds of things, and then get granular with understanding in what time period these actions had to have occurred. And this is something, again, where if you have custom events in your app, this is where it really begins to shine and give us an understanding of, if a user has allowed contact access, let's say, and then we want to know if they did an in-app purchase, then we could see, how long that might have occurred in and see how many people did that by day 1 as an example.
And then we're also doing this by gender, right? Is that what we're saying? We're splitting it out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we split it out by gender in this case, but then I could look and see by day 3, like what this kind of looks like, right? And then you can go in and take a look at the data, and obviously this is kind of, again, demo data, so not necessarily the real stuff you would see when you did it, but you would be able to get an understanding of how users are looking at 2 separate actions.
Right.
Yeah.
This is great. I love the ability to drill down into all of this, to get access to, basically just slice and dice the data any way that you want, just by selecting. And it doesn't seem, I've seen some reporting interfaces that they're NASA control panels, right? Yeah. And you're just like, I don't even know what to do. But here it kind of leads you through, the thought process and helps you to decide what you're looking for.
Yeah. And again, with the filters, you can kind of continue to add filters. Like, you're not just limited to one, right? Like, I could come and see on top of that, specific languages and all of that kind of stuff. So if you have a question, we can help you answer it.
That part actually kind of excites me because as a programmer, I know what it's like to write the SQL query to get that information. Yes. And I'm like, ooh, you just push the buttons and it comes out, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
just magical.
Because behind the scenes, I'm writing that query in my head, and I'm like, is it this way or is it that way? It's always hard to figure out. So
yeah. Well, this way we've done most of the legwork for you, so hopefully you'll get the answers as soon as you need them.
Well, thank you for sharing this.
Yes, thanks, and we're happy to answer any questions about it too. So you can tweet at us, Flurry Mobile, and then if you have any further questions, developer.yahoo.com. There's some help links there as well.